Human Rights Watch criticizes Kenya for forced repatriation of Somali refugees. A simple kit tests water for deadly E. coli. And luxurious wedding trends from Pakistan's Bridal Week. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, tonight we begin with a focus on the global refugee crisis. Amnesty International is accusing wealthy countries of neglecting their refugee responsibilities, leaving just 10 nations to shoulder the burden of caring for more than half of the world's refugees. In East Africa, Kenyan officials say they are fed up with carrying such a heavy burden and will close down its massive refugee camp and repatriate more than 300,000 Somali refugees. Kenya alleges the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab is using the camp as a recruiting ground to radicalize people who then launch attacks inside Kenya's borders. Kenya's Foreign Minister Amina Mohammed says the repatriation is being carried out humanely and in line with international obligations. However, a new Human Rights Watch report says the repatriation of Somali refugees from the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya fails to meet international standards. Now, for more insight on the refugee crisis, Bill Frelick, director of the Human Rights Watch Refugee Program, has just returned from the Dadaab refugee camp in northeastern Kenya and joins me to talk about the dire situation there. Bill, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the first question a person has to ask, what are the international standards that you say Kenya is not keeping up to?
There are basically two standards here for voluntary repatriation. Mm-hmm. One is that people have an actual choice, a real choice between going and staying. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the Kenyan government has not given any assurances whatsoever that after November anyone will be allowed to stay. So there's a great deal of fear, a great deal of anxiety about what is going to happen with the announcement of this camp closure and a great deal of pressure being put on people to return. Mm-hmm. The second point for voluntary return is that people need to be informed about conditions back in the country of origin, the place to which they will be returning. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the information that's being provided to the refugees is extremely superficial, out of date, and misleading.
So first, who's providing the information? We believe that UNHCR is supposed to provide this information.
Correct.
Is it that the information is not accurate, is not clear to the people, or perhaps the information they get scares them off?
Well, the information is provided by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. That's the UN Refugee Agency, and it's tasked to provide that information as part of its job to facilitate voluntary returns. However, we saw what are called the help desks that are located in the camps. And literally, we were in the Hagadera camp, which is a huge camp within the Dadaab complex. And there was literally one desk, one man sitting at one desk with one computer terminal. And outside, early in the morning, there were hundreds and hundreds of people that were trying to get in. And the information that was provided on Mogadishu, they had a pamphlet. Yeah. There was one line on security, basically saying that there are police patrols in Mogadishu.
That's a joke.
That's the entirety of the information that was being provided to people. And that pamphlet had not been updated since December 2015. Mm-hmm.
So
this was in August that we were there.
Failure on the part of the UNHCR in terms of the kind of information they're providing and, of course, the mode of providing this information.
Exactly. You need to have informed consent, and that clearly the standards are not being met.
Yes. Now, on the Kenya side, we know that the country does not have a refugee integration policy. Does it look humane, though, to have these people live in a refugee camp for decades?
Well, I mean, the alternative of pushing people back into Somalia, a situation that's actually quite dangerous still, it's an unsettled situation. UNHCR will not be promoting even voluntary repatriation because they say that the situation is not conducive to returns. Mm-hmm. However, they will facilitate if it's a voluntary return. What are the alternatives for people? If, in fact, the government was closing the camp and saying that people could work and they could, be sustained and integrated into the society, that would be one thing. But clearly, given the security rationale for closing the camp. That's not what the Kenyans are intending.
Yeah. Now, Bill, could there be perhaps another option? For instance, Kenyan authorities negotiating with other third-party countries where refugees are willing to move to those countries that are, have a repatriation or rather refugee integration program or are willing to take them in for some time. They could facilitate that.
Well, as the introduction to this segment indicated, there's been a real lack of international solidarity, a lack of international support for refugee resettlement in particular. And we have, of course, the Syrian situation, sucking whatever willingness there might be to take refugees. The situation in Somalia is what's called a protracted situation. Yeah. It's been there since the early 1990s. And the number of people, realistically, that could be resettled to third countries, unfortunately, is a very small fraction. So we really are talking about what additional support can be provided to the Kenyan government, mostly financial support, to help build the infrastructure, to help make it possible. Last year, the World Food Program reduced the rations to the camp by 30%. So that gives you an idea that people are having fewer resources available to them just to sustain their level of existence, of subsistence, in a place where they're not allowed to leave, they're not allowed to work, and they're really restricted in many, many ways.
Well, we just hope that somehow there will be some resolution to this. Bill, thanks a lot for coming along and sharing your experiences with us. That is Bill Froelich, who is the director of the Human Rights Watch refugee program. Now, nearly 65 million people worldwide have been forced from their homes, creating a global refugee crisis, and that's according to Doctors Without Borders. Now, the International Humanitarian Organization has opened an exhibit on the National Mall here in Washington, D.C. to help U.S. citizens understand the plight of these refugees. VOA's Marcus Harton has this story.
The reasons that make people leave their homes: war, tension, political strife, economic instability.
The exhibit asks visitors to assume the identity of a refugee or displaced person. As they move from station to station, they have to make choices.
Just imagine you are leaving your home, imagine you are leaving your place, and you have to take 5 things with you. Family photos, keys. You hope you're going to go back home, eh? Well, you're not the only one. Many refugees do keep their keys to their house.
Visitors are encouraged to sit in a rubber raft designed to hold 7 people.
60 people will get into these boats to cross from Turkey to Greece.
Doctors Without Borders wants Americans to better understand the plight of refugees and internally displaced people forced from their homes.
We need to raise awareness. We need to bear witness. We need to bring back the voices from the field and share our experiences.
The exhibit attempts to create a connection between refugees and Americans who may see little reason to care about the global refugee crisis.
They can just pretend that it's kind of far away and not that big of a deal, and especially if they don't see anybody responding to it, the politicians, the leaders, they can easily ignore it.
I never really thought it was that big of a deal, but now I kind of see that it's a huge deal, and a lot of people are really struggling.
After Washington, the exhibit stops in Boston, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia before closing in mid-November. Marcus Harton, VOA News, Washington.
Well, Ethiopia's opposition party leader Tuesday called on the government to allow an independent inquiry into the deaths of scores of people at a religious festival on Sunday. More than 50 people were killed in a stampede in the Oromia region that was triggered when police used tear gas and fired shots into the air to disperse anti-government protesters at the annual Irecha festival. Merera Godina, chairman of the opposition Oromo Federalist Congress, says the government needs to probe the deaths of all of those killed in protests over the past few months. Meanwhile, here in Washington, the U.S. Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, Linda Thomas Greenfield, told VOA the U.S. is concerned about the recent developments in Ethiopia.
We're very worried about these. We've had very intense discussions with the government of Ethiopia at the highest levels. We have encouraged the government to address the concerns there and look for ways to provide opportunities for these young people to express their dissatisfaction and not have the kinds of violent demonstrations that we have seen happening in the past couple of months. We walk a fine line for policy. We walk the line between trying to work with countries to help them address their concerns and help people address their concerns. If we were not talking to the Ethiopian government about civil rights, about human rights, about press freedoms, who else would be doing it?
Well, the Ethiopian government is dismissing charges that it clamps down on free speech or on its opponents, and instead blames rebel groups and dissidents abroad for stirring up the protests and provoking violence. Well, the two U.S. vice presidential candidates, Democratic Tim Kaine and Republican Mike Pence, meet in their only televised debate Tuesday in Fayetteville, Virginia. Now, this face-off comes a week after the first of three presidential debates between Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone previews the vice presidential debate.
The first Clinton-Trump showdown drew a record television audience for a presidential debate, more than 80 million people. The vice presidential debate between Democrat Tim Kaine and Republican Mike Pence is likely to draw fewer viewers, if history is any guide. Pence, the governor of Indiana, has been busy on the campaign trail, but is often overshadowed by Trump. Pence recently took his campaign to Arizona.
We're going to bring the American dream back to life, and we're going to get this economy moving again.
Tim Kaine, a U.S. senator from Virginia, campaigns in the shadow of Hillary Clinton. Kaine recently spoke to Democrats in Texas.
Let's just treat each other as equals. And that's the kind of person Hillary is, and that's the kind of person I am, and that's the kind of person all of you are. That unifies us.
The vice presidential debate comes on the heels of the first Clinton-Trump face-off, a debate where opinion polls show more voters thought Clinton was the winner, says Matthew Dalek.
So I think this moment both gave people reason to vote against Trump, but also maybe gave young people, African Americans, Latinos, key constituencies that Hillary Clinton needs to win, more motivation potentially to turn out to vote affirmatively for her.
Although there have been some notable vice presidential debate moments in the past, the vice presidential contenders usually take a back seat to their party presidential nominees. The focus is likely to remain on Clinton and especially Trump, who's on the defensive now over new revelations about his taxes, says analyst John Fortier.
So I do expect that both candidates will really be talking more about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and taking some swings at them than we might expect.
The second Clinton-Trump debate will be held Sunday in St. Louis, Missouri. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Well, he speaks Spanish. He's been a Catholic missionary and received his law degree from Harvard University. Now he can add to his resume Hillary Clinton's running mate for the 2016 presidential election. Here's a look at Virginia's Democratic Party Senator and Vice Presidential hopeful Tim Kaine. VOA's Arash Arabasadi reports.
A usually low-key politician, even he calls himself boring.
That's why I'm with her. That's why I'm with her. Are you with her?
But with Hillary Clinton at his side, new energy. Her choice is seen as a natural and a safe pick for a running mate. Tim Kaine spent the past 22 years in politics working his way up from city councilman to mayor to governor and a senator representing Virginia. A Midwesterner, Kaine studied at the University of Missouri as well as Harvard Law. A Catholic, he took a year off school to work as a missionary in Honduras, where he learned Spanish.
La conexión entre Centroamérica y los Estados Unidos en el asunto de migración o comercio.
Kaine says the poverty he saw in Central America inspired his life of service. It also led him to the woman who later became his wife, Anne.
These are tough times for many in our country, but we're tough people, and that's something else I learned from my folks. Tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Kane says one of his toughest times was as governor in 2007 when the mass shooting at Virginia Tech took place. Carried out by a deranged student, Kane pushed for statewide mental health reform in the tragic aftermath. As chair of the Democratic National Committee in 2008, he was even vetted as a potential running mate for then-Senator Barack Obama. Now, as Clinton's vice presidential pick, Kane draws praise but also doubts.
I like his policy positions, and I think he's a great addition, for the ticket.
I think he's going to do a good job. I think he evens out the ticket really well.
I don't have a lot of trust for Hillary, and so whatever is coming out of that side of the party, I just choose not to pay attention to it.
The harmonica-playing senator hopes he can change minds and win converts as he campaigns hard to help his running mate take the White House in November. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54. The stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Now coming up, E. coli detection in a fraction of the time. Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
If you are a hardworking single man in Japan, you may not have had the time to learn the kinds of skills you may need if you want to get married. I've been working so hard for so long I've forgotten about courting, says this man, so he enrolled in a class to learn how to become more appealing to potential life partners by learning about infant care. Changing a diaper could be harder than it looks for someone with no experience. The founder of Ikemen University, the company that gives the parenting class in Tokyo, says that men who complete the course get a certificate that they can use to enhance their dating profiles with matchmaking agencies. In addition to diaper changes, feeding and bathing of babies, the men learn about how to better communicate with spouses and how to talk about their feelings. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with important news on animal tuberculosis. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Leading doctors and veterinarians warn that animal tuberculosis is a greater threat to human health than previously realized. The group of experts from institutions, including the World Health Organization, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and the Stop TB Partnership say the disease can be more serious and harder to treat than conventional human tuberculosis. It's spread through contaminated food, and raw and unpasteurized milk is one of the most common sources of the infection. Animal tuberculosis, officially known as zoonotic tuberculosis, also affects those in close contact with infected animals, including veterinarians, farmers, and butchers. The experts published a call to action in the Lancet Infectious Diseases Medical Journal. A new study suggests 1 in 10 children have a monkey-like immune system that stops them from developing AIDS. The researchers analyzed the blood of 170 children from South Africa who had HIV, had never had antiretroviral therapy, and yet had not developed AIDS. The study in Science Translational Medicine found the children's immune systems were keeping calm, which prevented them being wiped out. An untreated HIV infection will kill 60% of children within 2.5 years, but the equivalent infection in monkeys is not fatal. The findings could lead to new immune-based therapies for HIV infection. Now, the World Health Organization estimates that more than 840,000 people die every year from preventable diarrheal illnesses, many of which are caused by food and water contaminated by the E. coli bacteria. Now, a Canadian company has created an E. coli detection kit that allows users to detect the deadly disease quickly right at the water source. VOA's Kevin Enoch reports.
The mobile water kit was field tested in New Delhi, where water contamination is a common problem.
The team says the field tests proved the kit works and anyone can use it.
Currently, no other technology available in the market which can detect E. coli between 2 minutes to an hour. So that's really makes it a rapid. Secondly, you don't need any trained person to do this. You can do the water testing right at the source. So there is no worry about transporting the samples.
It works by putting water in contact with a unique hydrogel. Within an hour, infected water changes color. Once the results are in, the team has developed an app that can broadcast the results over the web. With the field trials a success, the team says they're just about ready to begin selling the product for $2 to $3 US.
I believe we are in the right track so that in a year's time, Glacier Clean technology will have mobile water kit in the shelves of the supermarkets.
The next step for the team is a more advanced version of the product that also disinfects contaminated water. Kevin Enix, VOA News, Washington.
That's our health report for today. To stay in touch with me, find me on Twitter at @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks, our healthy reporter, Lenore. Now be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday, right here on Africa 54. Now, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim says to cut global poverty further requires strong efforts to make economic growth more inclusive. He's called Kim as International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde warned that the world economy is expanding too slowly. Now, viewers, Jim Randall has more.
The World Bank says stronger efforts to ease inequality are a key to further reducing extreme poverty around the globe. 767 million people lived on $1.90 a day in 2013, 100 million fewer than 2012. The 2013 figures show 10.7% of the world's population in dire poverty, but that's a decline from the 12.4% the previous year. Half of the world's poor live in sub-Saharan Africa, another third in South Asia. World Bank President Jim Yong Kim applauds the decline, but says inequality is an obstacle to slashing poverty to just 3% of the global population by 2030.
Inequality overall is far too high. This level of inequality constrains growth, and it also breeds instability.
Kim says it is remarkable that poverty is declining when global economic growth is lethargic. But he urges national leaders to spend more on infrastructure and schools and make preparations to cope with disasters like floods that can derail growth.
We have to find a way to encourage leaders to see that these investments will not only lead to inclusive economic growth, but will also establish the social foundations that can act as a bulwark against instability, violence, and conflict.
Years after the global recession ended, factory workers, employers, and political leaders all are frustrated by the slow pace of recovery. So is IMF head Christine Lagarde.
Global growth that is too slow, for too long, and for too few.
Economist David Stockton of the Peterson Institute for International Economics says the world economy is expanding at just a 3% pace per year and is likely to stay stuck in low gear.
I don't really see much currently suggesting that we're going to break to the upside, and I don't see any significant signs that we're likely to slump to the downside either.
Many voters in the United States and elsewhere blame flawed trade deals for lost jobs and dim prospects that things will get better, something that has helped candidates like free trade critic Donald Trump. But his rival Hillary Clinton has also spoken out against a key trade deal. However, that voter anger is misplaced, says Lagarde.
Trade has been the engine that has propelled economic progress.
Jim Randall, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Luxurious wedding looks from Pakistan Bridal Week. We'll be right back.
You're with Africa 54. Welcome back. I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick. You're really going to like what's trending. The Olympia Beauty Show has kicked off in London, and this year the focus is on the face and the traditional tricks for getting a colorful and glamorous look. Watch out, guys. Safe, semi-permanent false eyelashes for both women and men seem to be a major trend. There's plenty here to suggest the in colors this year are vivid reds and bright just about everything except teeth. You'll be happy to know the preferred color for teeth is still white, thank goodness. Highly contoured faces continue to be popular. Consumers in the UK are expected to spend an average of $440 on beauty and skincare products this year. That is a record high. Now for the real beauty news. If you think you could be the next Kim Kardashian, you might have some competition. Meet Frederick the Great, who's been called the Kardashian of horses. But he's more than just a pretty face. Frederick has an enviable social media presence, a soon-to-be shampoo line, and wait for it, a TV series. The equine star has become a veritable cash cow, so to speak. His owner/manager says Frederick rakes in over $20,000 a month. He has his own Facebook page, Twitter account, and of course a YouTube channel that's logged over 15 million views. Jealous much? And finally, thinking about getting married? We have some bright ideas for you from the annual bridal fashion show in Pakistan. It showcased some of South Asia's most beautiful wedding trends. As in previous years, designers again featured lush fabrics with lavish embroidery and bold accessories. It also featured bustiers, draped ruffles, full skirts, sheer jackets and belts. South Asian brides aren't shy when it comes to wearing rich colors at their weddings, as you can see. But this year, designs included pastels, pink and stunning reds for brides as well as grooms. The show also featured wedding makeup and hairstyles guaranteed to turn heads. Well, the big business of beauty. That is what's trending today.
Well, Haiti, thanks a lot. We're grateful for you joining us. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC. That's Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching from here, Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words.
Does this word mean something good has happened?
Unleashed. The president is sending Secretary of State John Kerry to the Middle East to help build a coalition to defeat the militants who have unleashed a wave of violence that has included attacks on Iraq's Christians and other minority communities, and recently the videotaped killing of American journalist James Foley.
Unleashed means to let something very powerful happen quickly.
It is like taking a leash off a dog and letting it attack someone. In our story, the militants unleashed or set off a wave of violence.
Usually, unleashed does not mean something good.
So, the next time you hear the word unleashed, you will know what this news word means.